on Facebook. So, welcome, Shameka, and thanks for taking the time to speak with us. Um, do you want to do a brief introduction and talk about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Shameka Andrews, and I am a disability advocate and consultant. I work for an organization called the Self Advocacy Association of New York State, where I am the community outreach coordinator. And so I do a lot of outreach for the organization, as well as have my own consulting business on the side.
Right. What is the focus of your advocacy and consultancy work?
Well, the two areas that I mostly work in is self-advocacy and health and wellness. Um, and sometimes that changes depending on, uh, what's going on in the world. But it's all connected to disability advocacy. Like, we just had an election. So, before that, I was doing a lot of voting work and making sure people with disabilities understood about voting. Like right now, I'm focused a lot on self-care with the holidays coming up. So I do a variety of different work, all connected to empowering people with disabilities with tools and resources.
What are the main challenges around advocacy and inclusivity?
Well, I would say the biggest challenge in whatever area I happen to be focused in at the time is access. That was a big conversation when we were talking about voting, to make sure that people with disabilities had access to accessible and independent voting options. Um, Access is an issue when you're talking about jobs, when you're talking about homes. So I would say access is all across the board, probably the largest issue.
And have you encountered anyone with ataxia or any other neurodegenerative disorders?
I work with a variety of people with various disabilities, um, whether it's, through my advocacy work, or if they're just um, coming to an event. So there's so many different arrays of disabilities of people that I work with. So.
What sort of resources do people ask for, and what do you provide?
Well, through Self Advocacy Association, we help people learn to advocate for themselves. So we provide trainings on how to be an advocacy leader in your community. I also, through my consultancy, uh, provide information referral. So like just within the last few days, somebody called me up and was looking for, legal assistance. And then somebody else was calling to ask about, health and wellness resources. So it really runs the gamut of different things that I can provide. It's a lot of information and referral, because I have been in the advocacy world for about 20 years now. So I've gained a lot of information. So a lot of times people are just calling for information and referral to a service.
And you're also an author. You wrote a book called Butterfly and Wheels. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, so Butterfly and Wheels was my first children's book. It's basically, it's a story about my life and my experience with bullying, but it's adapted for a child. Um, so that was my first experience, writing a book, and it's all about helping people, helping children especially, uh, learn to accept all of the things about themselves and to celebrate who they are. Whether they're in wheelchairs or whether they have some other form of disability or whatever makes them feel different.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone who wants to be a better advocate either for themselves or someone else, or wants to do what you're doing?
Well, one way that they can do that is they can, reach out to organizations like the Self-Advocacy Association. Like I said, we provide a variety of training. One of the most important things is to know your rights. What are your rights in a certain area, and understanding what policies and various things are, and also knowing who you advocate to for a certain issue, whether you want to advocate to a local politician or just a local community member. Knowing who, what your issue is, who you're supposed to advocate to, and get support, get the support that you need, to help you um, advocate for whatever you're advocating for. So, and like I said, there's a variety of organizations out there, like the Self-Advocacy Association. If you're not in New York, there's also the Independent Living Centers. That there's one all over the country. That you can reach out to get involved. That's how I started in the advocacy world, through local independent living center and volunteering there. And then eventually they gave me a job. So uh, I would say, with COVID and stuff, I know volunteering is a little bit more difficult, but just a lot of places have, gone online like this. I know our local independent living centers have a lot of events and things that you can get involved in online. So that's what I would recommend.
We have a lot of people who are from all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
and I know, well, I don't know if you have any expertise outside of the US, or what would you recommend if someone wants to get started? What should they look for?
Well, like I said, I know in this country and in most countries that I'm familiar with, have some sort of either independent living center or state disability organization. So I would say start there. Um, or you can Google something like, peer advocacy, um, or, benefits counseling. So those types of things I know are broad areas, and they are available in various places. So I would say start there. Start with your local either independent living center or disability advocacy organization.
And what is the future of disability advocacy work like? I mean, what are there any big things that have been done, and what is still left to be done, do you think?
Well, we've accomplished, here in New York, we've accomplished a lot. I mean, just in the US in general, we've been able in the last 20 years that I've been doing this, I've worked on, making sure schools were accessible. We've done work on, renaming our state disability organization. But there's always work to be done. That's kind of the thing about this field. There's always, work to be done. I mean, we just celebrated the 30th anniversary of the ADA, which came with lots of work and lots of, advocates that worked on that. But there's still tons of things to be done. Like I said, access, even though, advocates of that time, fought for access to transportation, and that was a big thing, but that's still an issue in a lot of places. Like I said, access to affordable, accessible housing is still an issue. Having access to jobs and equal pay is still an issue. So there's still lots of work that needs to be done, but we have been able to accomplish a lot.
And where could people get in touch with you if they need some help in one of those areas?
Well, I am on Facebook for those people that use Facebook or social media. That's where I am the majority of the time, and that's where most people reach out to me. You can also reach out to me via email, and my email I can share is S as in my first name, Andrews, which is my last name, at SANYS.org is my email. So either one of those ways, people can reach out to me if they have a question or, whatever the case may be.
And everyone should know that we'll go ahead and include that in the follow-up to this meeting that we'll send out probably later today or tomorrow, whatever. Well, thanks a lot for your time, Shameka. We just want to take a moment to open up the floor to everyone else. They can simply raise their hand or type in the chat if they have a question. We can go from there.
Sounds good.
Does anyone have a question for Shameka? Sorry, John, you're on mute. Oh, I forgot to mention that you'll have to unmute yourself if you have a question, or simply raise your hand. No questions?
Go on. I'll think on. Takes a minute to think about it. I'll think about it.
Courtney, do you have it, or do you have any questions?
I got a question. I got a question, Shameka.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Do you strictly work in New York then?
Well, I'm from Albany, New York.
Right.
So I work here in New York, but like I said, I'm online. So I'm connected with people from all over the world,
Right.
because of that. But my office and, the office that right now I'm working from home, but, Self-Advocacy Association it's a New York organization. But like I said, I get calls from people from all over the world, and I speak to groups like yours who are all over the world. Even though I'm in New York, I'm connected with people from all over. So.
Right.
Courtney, do you have a question?
Oh, sure. So I think one of the challenges that the people with disabilities are in our community that we have is with employment, and access to employment and being able to find that sort of, I guess, security. So what advice would you have in terms of, getting your foot in the door, how to go about finding employment for someone with disabilities?
I think one of the things that I would always say, this is a little bit harder in this current climate, but
Mhm.
I've always started out any position that I've done as a volunteer. So maybe start with reaching out to organizations that you might want to work with. Whether it's an independent living center or, and ask if they have any, volunteer positions, and say, I'd like to get to know your organization. Do you have any, positions available? So that's how I started, is really just getting to know organizations and having them, be out there and having them get to know me. In this current climate, there's still, like I said, a lot of what I've found anyway, is it's a little, depending on who you are and if you have the access to the technology, it's a little bit easier to reach out to organizations, because a lot of these organizations are now online and you don't have to drive to an office or ride a bus if you don't drive, which I know a lot of people like myself do not. So in that aspect, it's made it a little bit easier in this climate to connect with groups and to connect with organizations, as long as you've had have the access to the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Shameka,
Yes.
what do you think about the American ADA? Do you know what that is?
Yes.
Okay.
As I stated before, I think the passing of the ADA, came with a lot of good work, and a lot of, I know, a few of the advocates that actually, worked on that piece of legislation. So, but I believe, even though, it has brought a lot of change, there's still a lot of things that need to be worked on and need to, be looked at. And I think one of the biggest issues, because I was recently on a panel that talked about the ADA, and one of the speakers said the biggest thing with the ADA is that there needs to be more enforcement. And that's kind of the biggest issue, where we have these laws and have these different things, but we don't really have people to enforce them and to make sure that things are being done the way they're supposed to be done, unless somebody files a complaint or something like that. So.
Yeah, right. That's what I think. Like, if you went to Home Depot, say, for example, you go to Home Depot, well, I don't know, it's a lot of work for you. So what? If I can't do it, I can't do it. Right? I mean, that's the enforcement I'm thinking of. They're obligated to follow ADA, but they don't.
Right.
By saying, okay, no light duty or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
They're giving you lip service, right, John?
That's what they do, Josie. Lip service. Like,
Yeah.
Sorry
Yeah,
about that.
Definitely.
Go ahead. But that's what I think, because we're in an environment, as I am, that, okay, there's Home Depot, there's fast food, there's this shop, there's that shop, but they all kind of like, they'd rather go for somebody that's young, no problems, but maybe that's the reality that I see, but maybe not. Maybe I have to just volunteer, like you said. Hey, you got a volunteer job? I'll do it. No problem.
Yeah, like I said, I know there's, like I said, lots of issues like that with organizations and businesses that really don't, and that's part of what I do as well, is educating businesses on, accessibility and how they can be more accessible and accommodating and things like that. So that's, I also do work on the business side, so they know, the things that they are, supposed to be doing. And because in a lot of cases, some of them really don't. It's not that they necessarily don't want to, but they just don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So I do
Yeah.
work a lot of businesses to help them be more accessible.
And then I guess also, if that's the response you're getting from a potential employer, it's up to the individual to contact someone to advocate and maybe take a legal action if that's required, whatever.
Yes, exactly. There are, here, I know here in New York, and they probably have them, similar things in other places. We have Disability Rights New York, which are, they're disability attorneys that will help you with different issues like that. I mean, there's the Justice Center, there's the ADA centers where, they would take complaints and direct you to what you would do as far as advocating for yourself. So yeah, so that's definitely important. Again, knowing what your rights are as far as, the accommodations that you are allowed to ask for, in a job or, in a school or whatever your particular thing is.
As a disabled person, and the medical benefits we get from insurance companies basically suck. Is there a group that advocates so that Medicare has to and Medicaid change their policies so they're more ADA compliant with what we need, not with what the gen? Is there a group that advocates against the insurance companies? Do you know?
I don't know that there's one particular group that focuses on that. I know here in New York, we did have a group a while ago that was looking at those issues. I know there was also a Medicaid redesign group. I haven't followed a lot of their work in a while and looking at that. But I know there are people that do that. And like I said, I haven't looked at that particular issue in a while. But I know they were doing some looking at Medicaid and looking at different stakeholder groups. I mean, that's always like one of those issues because you have to look at, changing legislation that's like a million years old. So that's a little bit harder than, advocating for, a job accommodation.
So ADA compliance doesn't handle that type of issue then, is what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think the Medicaid and what Medicaid covers and all of that is a separate, bigger issue. And how they run and the issues with that. That's separate from the ADA.
I just thought of a question. So a lot of us, like I'm not saying that advocacy for anybody with a disability is going to be easy. Obviously, every case is different, right? But from what I know, a lot of us have challenges where maybe we're not fully diagnosed yet, and we're sort of in this limbo, right? Or in the case of myself, I'm not in a wheelchair. I don't have any walking aids. So it's hard for me to establish that I am disabled,
Hmm.
right? How do you think that would work for people in that case?
Well, I think what we as a group, when I say we, I mean self advocacy and the people that I work with, is that we try, when we do trainings and we go out in the community, we try to let people know that disability doesn't look one way, right? Even if you have a bunch of people in wheelchairs, their needs are not the same. When I worked at the Independent Living Center, we had 5 people there that had my same disability, but it affected each and every one of us completely different. Like there were people, I use a power chair. And then there was somebody else that used crutches that had the same disability. And then there, like you said yourself, there were people that didn't use any mobility aid at all. So that's a continuous message that we try to, promote, is that disability doesn't look, one particular way. And, just because you may have talked to one group of people with disability doesn't mean that their needs and the next person's needs are going to be the same. So you have to, look at people as individuals. So, I mean, that's continuous education and educating people on, your disability, and having, awareness days with your legislators, and, making sure, working with your cities and states, and having, awareness campaigns, and, uh, it's just continuous education of saying, this is what my disability looks like. This is what my needs are. And, it doesn't look the same as this person over here. So it's just really about, continuing to educate people.
And I'm not sure how it works in the US, but over here there's some sometimes there are things in place where you can go to an employer via an organization and say, okay, the government's going to pay half of this person's salary or whatever, right?
Yeah.
To
Right.
encourage them to hire that person.
Right.
Is there anything like that in the US?
Yes, there's a similar, there's an employment, it's called something employment training program. I can't remember the exact title of it right now, but yes, we have a similar program, like you said, that, allows people to get hired by a certain organization and, get it paid for and things like that. So they're able to get that experience. There's lots of different programs. I mean, here in New York, we have something called, Pathways to Employment. We have, employment assistance programs. We have apprenticeships. So there's a few different options of helping people, gain work experiences. There's also a program called Ticket to Work. There's also, if you get Social Security, there is something called the PASS program, where you can, save money and towards your employment goals, and it doesn't affect your benefits. There's also lots of other work incentives, which a lot of people don't necessarily always know about, and they're afraid that if they go to work, that they will lose their benefits, but that's not always the case. There's also, here in New York and in other places I know, they just established what's called a ABLE account, which is another way for you to save money and not have it affect your benefits. So there are different options out there, to assist people that they may not be aware of. Again, it's that education piece of making sure that people know the resources that are available in their particular area. Again, with something like that, I always say, if you have a local independent living center in your state, in your country, to reach out to them, because they have somebody there that can help you and guide you to figuring out what resources will work for you and your
And speaking of education, what is there in terms of continuing education? Like, suppose I wanted to go to university or something.
Well, there's lots of different options. There's adult programs that teach cooking, that teach another language. Different organizations have continuing education. The local colleges here, at least I know, have training, development, professional development training through the college in the evening. Again, you'd have to look at what each of these things look like, now because of COVID and things. A lot of the stuff is online. There's a website called Think College that has a lot of different programs. So there's a lot of different things out there. And like I said, if people are looking for a particular thing and they have questions, they can feel free to reach out to me, and I can, send them some different resources depending on what they're looking for.
And does anyone else have any questions for Shameka?
Umika,
Go ahead, Mark.
what is that Social Security program? PASS, PASS?
Yes, PASS, and yes, yes, it's PASS. Yeah, PASS.
We'll include that in the mail to you, John.
Very good, thank you.
Mark number one, we're gonna ask your question.
Yeah, I was curious to see, what would you say is the number one issue that people come to you for help with?
Right now, I would say in this climate is, just things to do, because a lot of people are isolated. They want fun stuff to do. They want to know what's available. So they're bored and they're isolated and they want to make friends. They want to meet people. So I know at Self Advocacy, we put together a weekly event update that I send out in email and on our website, which has our week-long events on Zoom, and we call them Staying Connected meetings. So it's an opportunity for individuals to get together and also learn about different topics. So that's what people just want to be connected to others right now, because a lot of people are isolated because of COVID and because of shutdowns and things like that. So we do a lot of just connecting people and hosting different events online.
Any other questions for Shameka? No, well, I'd like to thank you, Shameka, for your time today, and we certainly appreciate it. And I guess have a good night. It's you're probably on the same time as us, 6:30 right now.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep, that's what time it is. It is here. So yes, well, thank you for this opportunity.
Okay.
Nice talking.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice
Thank you.
talking to you.
All right.
And
Alright.
everyone
Well-
else, you can stick around. We'll have our regular meeting. I'm just